Evermore is Taylor Swift's ninth album. Like Folklore, we found out about the album less than 24 hours before it was released. Swift describes this record as a sister record to Folklore, sharing the same set of producers on most of the tracks, yet this time around, on top of Bon Iver, we also get Haim and The National. The opening track, Willow, marks the lead single off the record, and the music video is just as gorgeous as the visuals for Cardigan, continuing the story in that video in some ways. She continues the motif of the invisible string, even down to the instrumental sounding similar. The lyrics sound like a spell cast to make someone fall in love with you. Compared to Cardigan, I think this is a much more compelling and thrilling opening single, but that's just in my honest opinion. Champagne Problems seems to tell the story of an engagement gone wrong. The instrumental feels like a proper extension of the Folklore sound, but more refined. Her bridge evokes the storytelling prowess that she had back in Speak Now, but she throws you for a loop for once. Written with William Bowery, aka Joe Alwyn, it serves as a cinematic scene rendered into a hymn. There are many layers to the story, including the fact that this woman who's telling the story could be mentally ill, as evidenced by the bridge, but honestly, there's just so much dense storytelling material in this album and in the song. Gold Rush is the only track to not be produced by Aaron Dessner. It opens with an epiphany-like delivery, so it feels very epic. The verse work here is very deceiving as she enters a killer pre-chorus that builds up into a blooming refrain. Again, it's very dense, it's enveloping, it's romantic. The instrumental here is so simple, but the words layered over here allude to endless thoughts that roam her mind, a living daydream. I personally found it to be a love ballad through and through, an ode to someone that she's just really dedicated to writing about and writing folklore about and thoroughly loves. Jack Antonoff co-wrote this magical track. He calls it his favorite off the record. It's a highlight for me. Tis the Damn Season's opening guitars reminded me a piece, but they were a little bit edgier. I was personally scared that Taylor would shy away from the storytelling aspect, but she really commits to it even deeper this time around. She really abandons the simplicity of words for a world of sensory delight. The chorus is simple and works. This one really opens up the Dorothea story that she mentioned in her letter about the album. Dorothea's arc in this album is about someone who left her hometown to become a star and comes home for the holidays and falls for a former flame. She sorely wants to be with this guy, even for a weekend. Aaron Dessner co-wrote and produced this track, explaining its resemblance to The National, but it's really bent towards Taylor's taste. Tolerate It continues Taylor's tradition of having emotionally devastating track fives. I really like this track because it seems to be about a love for someone who's much older or wiser or too busy. It's told from the perspective of someone who really tries and pines their hardest for someone who's a little bit too old to remember what puppy love was. Perhaps it's about the dark side of everyday romances, the crushing silences when the honeymoon phase has come and gone, and you must wrestle with the fact that twos are made of ones that don't always add up. That's what I really like about Taylor's music. It really bends and folds into a million stories, even if it's just really simple. I feel like anybody could really take this track and apply it to a romance or a relationship in their lives. No Body, No Crime with Haim is a sonic adventure. Este Haim's vocals fit so well. Taylor's just literally singing about an insane small-town murder mystery as she speculates about a story about a woman who worries when her friend Este goes missing and was murdered by her cheating husband. Even wilder is when the narrator murders the husband and frames the murder on the mistress of the husband. Taylor revealed that she was inspired by an obsession with true crime podcasts, and it shows. Haim's vocals really add a great deal to the song. It's a personal favorite of mine. It's a wild ride. Happiness's brilliance comes from its tremendous instrumental. This heartbreaking story, told from the perspective of someone who's not the one, reassuring their muse that even if it didn't work out, happiness will come, is truly a natural successor to Peace, with an inversion of the themes but a similar song structure. Taylor has gotten so good at telling stories. The green light of forgiveness evokes Gatsby and imagery, but with a genuine sense of maturity that bleeds with grace. The refrain at the end of the song really sold the song to me. Dorothea feels so lived in and like an old song lost to the times. It's reflective of our modern times with a sly reference to a phone. The instrumental feels like a warm hug from an old friend. It's part of the secret romance about a girl who left her town to chase her dreams and rediscovers her love, but it's so gorgeous. This time time we get to hear from the former Flame himself. Let me tell you, when Taylor Swift has the talent of being able to write from a man's perspective in a genuine, real way, that's real songwriting talent. Coney Island with the National genuinely feels experimental yet familiar. The male vocals on this track really bleed and blend into the song extremely well. Taylor wrote this track with William Bowery, who we now know to be Joe Alwyn, along with the writers from the National. This song feels extremely real. It's about two lovers drifting apart. Let me tell you, when I say that Ivy is one of my favorite tracks on the album, it's a gorgeous metaphor for a lover who's literally growing on her home, a metaphor for the narrator's life. This song's about an affair, but the lyrics just paint such a vivid image. It's so unshakable that you want to root for these misplaced lovers who are committing adultery. The bridge reassures us that it takes two to tango. It feels like a sister to August in some ways, but more mature, more grown. Cowboy Like Me is a beautiful song. It feels like a return to her country roots, but it's extremely grounded down to earth. Marcus Mumford sings the background vocals, making this one of my favorite tracks. This song's about two scoundrels who really believe that the longest con is falling in love forever, and the heights that they pull are with each other's hearts. It's ambiguous to see where they relent, but really, I do think they ended up together. Long story short, takes on a whole new vibe for the record. The instrumental is insanely more conventional. This is the closest to a conventional pop song that we got on this record. And I love it for that, despite its lyrics being insanely rich, almost autobiographical about 2016 and the ensuing nightmare that she lived. Taylor continues her Wonderland imagery, speaking about rabbit holes. The bridge feels like a reassurance that he's the one. Her bad habits are broken evermore because of him. I gotta talk about the beautiful third verse. She takes such a beautiful swipe at her self-destructive nemesis, and it's a reminder to her past self that her love is more important than her bad habits. Marjorie is the next track, and it's the name of Taylor's grandmother, who was a singer who inspired Taylor herself to pursue her career, so it feels like a fitting tribute. But people also say that the song is about Marjorie West, a girl who disappeared at 5 years old in Pennsylvania. Dorothea was the sister's name. People speculate that it could be a tribute to both, but I'm leaning more on the grandmother and the influence that Marjorie carried into her art form. It's track 13 to accompany Epiphany, which was about her grandfather who fought in the wars. Also, part of the backing vocal seems to be made from old archival recordings of Marjorie's singing. I've been always dreaming of the day that Taylor Swift touches hyperpop, and Closure is that moment. Oh my god, the production with BJ Burden, who worked on Charli XCX's Forever, and the vocals that she has fighting chaotic elements really hammers in how experimental this album is. Taylor's voice slips in and out of this vocoder and glitches to really hammer in her points, her pain, her confusion at this poor guy who's asking for his own weak version of closure when she's really closed the story out. It's a highlight for me, possibly one of my favorite tracks from her. Taylor should go hyperpop on her next album, I dare her to. Evermore is the album closer, but it really feels like a sequel to Exile, down to Justin Vernon's vocals, but he really comes in with a change up. Taylor singing on the bridge while Justin really keeps his track going on. What I really liked about this track is that it's a reminder to listeners that the anxieties that we felt during the pandemic aren't really evermore. They will disappear one day. This record, long story short, is one of Taylor's best works to date. I feel weirdly enough that Folklore, in spite of its indie dressage, really feels more like a pop record now. Evermore is an alternative masterpiece of lyrical wit. It's denser, more dedicated to telling stories through lyrics and providing songs meant to score significant life moments. William Bowery's tenure as an actor really colors Taylor's magnificent writing ability to create an odyssey of emotion and escapism. I definitely have to recommend this album for a listen. I give Evermore a solid 9.5 out of 10. And that wraps up my review. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, comment your favorite track below. A big shout out to members who really make this channel sing. Thank you so much for supporting me. A free way to support my channel is to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much if you hit that button, and I will see you next video.